everybody. Nice to meet you all. My name is Sofia Quintero. I'm the founder at EnjoyHQ. And today I'm going to be talking about asynchronous communication. Essentially, once you learn how to work remotely, you normally graduate to distributed work. And so I'm going to explain the difference of that, how we graduated into distributed work within EnjoyHQ. And I'm going to show you some fake examples of how asynchronous communication work, the type of documentation and the level of detail that you need to have when it comes to communicating asynchronously. So the first thing is like, what is the difference between working remotely and working as a distributed team? The difference is that in a remote environment, you might be working with people in different locations, but they normally are online at the same time, or very similarly. They overlap in their time zones, so they are normally online at the same time. And that brings a bunch of issues that have been discussed the whole day that I'm not going to get into. But as you are making progress into understanding how you work together, even though you might not be in the same location, you will start evolving, hopefully, into a stage of fully distributed work. And fully distributed work is when you can work with other people that are in different places, that are also in different time zones. So you are not online at the same time. And most likely you won't be able to see or interact with a lot of your team members for a long time, unless there are specific calls. So this is in our case, we have team members in Japan, in Europe, and in the United States. So it's difficult to overlap in most cases. So we had to learn how to make progress without having to be all together at the same time. And another concept that I would like to define is this idea of collaboration and cooperation. Normally in remote environments, at the very beginning, when you are basically transitioning to working remotely because you used to have an office, normally in remote environments, people initially just do cooperation, which is, do you know where this file is? Where can I get this other stuff? Do you know who do I need to talk to get this done? Do you have access to this tool? And everybody's helping each other. Everybody's cooperating. But collaborating is a very different thing. Collaborating is when you are trying to achieve something and then somebody else have to pick up from where you left. So I need to work on a feature, or I need to work, let's talk about feature. I need to work on a feature. So I'm going to start with the first idea of what will be the scope of the problem that we want to solve. But then somebody else needs to help me with their inputs because they talk to some customers. So now we have to find a way that if that person is 9 hours, in time difference, let's say Japan, the person needs to pick up where I left and being able to build on top of that knowledge. So when I am back to work, we made progress. And that might sound like very obvious, but it's really complex when you do that with 5, 6, 7, 10 people working on one specific project and deliverable. So what we want to talk about today very specifically is how you run that communication so you can really work in a distributed manner. And that means no matter where you are, no matter the time zone, you can always make progress. And that takes time to get there. But for all of us or of you that started working remotely just recently, or you've been working remotely for a while, perhaps some of the things that I'm going to talk about today, you know already, and others will be an opportunity to fine-tune how you do that and perhaps move your team towards a more fully distributed environment, it is actually the goal for most remote teams to become fully distributed. So I would like to actually share my screen in a second, which I will do, but I want to mention a couple of things. The importance of becoming distributed, fully distributed team is because it depends on what you want and the type of work environment that you need. It's not that you have to be fully distributed, but if you want to work at your own hours, if you want to not be online all the time, if you want to work or hire people that is around the world without any limitations, then you want to be able to master distributed work. If you don't care about any of those things, and then you probably don't have to be fully distributed. But if you care about working on your own, anytime that you want, in any location, and really do that with freedom and autonomy, and then you have to put in place some systems for supporting that. So a lot of teams need a foundation to get there, and it's normally related with culture and the team members. So you cannot transition to a distributed environment fully if you don't have a couple of things in place. So for example, you need to have a culture where there is complete trust, where nobody's chasing each other, when there is no micromanaging from anybody, where you can actually provide negative feedback and have very difficult conversations without damaging the relationships. So if you don't have that in your organization and there's still a lot of conflicts, it will be very difficult to move into a distributed environment. You really have to find a way to build the relationships in the team so everybody respect each other to the point that you trust them completely, that things will get done and things will be communicated when it needs to happen. And they're open to admitting mistakes as well. So a lot of psychological safety needs to be in place before you transition to fully distributed work. Other things is that you have to be really, really good at writing. You have to be exceptionally good at writing because that will be the main vehicle for communicating. So, and that doesn't mean that you have to be great at narrating things or not have typos and perfect grammar. It's actually the opposite. Typos and grammar doesn't matter. What it matters is that you can explain complex concepts in a very simple way, in plain English. If English is the language that you use to work, then it has to be so plain, because what it will happen is that you will work with a ton of different nationalities and a ton of different cultures, and the sense of humor and the meaning of words are different. So you have to understand that whatever you're trying to communicate, it needs to be understood by multiple cultures and multiple levels of English and proficiency. So you have to be able to break things down in the most simple level. Otherwise, you're going to waste a lot of time and people will be very frustrated. So that is important. And the last thing that you need to have in place is a ridiculous amount of discipline to do documentation, to document everything. And that is what we're going to be sharing today. I'm going to show you our real life documents that we use to document things and why they're structured that way. You won't be able to read them because it's just Google Docs, but I will go into some sections and explain why we put those things there and why they're so important. But perhaps the most important part of distributed work is that if you get it wrong and it doesn't work, it will work completely against you, and it's better that you don't have it at all. So if you get remote, if you work well remotely and you want to transition to fully distributed and you don't have that foundation there, what is going to happen is that the time zones and the misunderstanding are going to completely derail your team. So if you were not delivering product, let's say the time that you wanted, now it's going to be way worse, because while two people are not necessarily on the same page, and you have 10 hours difference, then you wasted 2 days or 4 days. And so that can be really, really hurtful for startups, large companies, or teams of any size. And you will experience that at some point. And the pain is so big that you start putting a bunch of processes in place, and then you start understanding what is the best way to communicate so that never happens again. But we had, for example, at the beginning, when we were adjusting to this a couple of years ago, there will be product launches that we were doing that will be delayed weeks. But on top of the weeks that things normally get delayed, it will be weeks on top. And that was just so painful for everybody. And it's frustrating that you start really focusing on fixing that. So you need a commitment from your culture to create a foundation, and then you can move into completely asynchronous communication. So let me share some examples of that. So I'm going to share my screen now, and then maybe somebody can tell me about, can you see my screen? Yes? Somebody in the backstage can say yes, or event? Yes, we can. Okay, awesome. So yes, you won't be able to see this, but I'll essentially move around and tell you a little bit about these 3 documents. So the first document is the document that we use to onboard team members into EnjoyHQ as a team. As a team member, as a new team member, regardless of their role. The second one that I'm going to take you through super fast is handling customer support. This is important for us because our engineers do customer support. Pretty much everybody in the company do customer support. And then we have a document. There is an example of how engineers in particular discuss the scope of work or prioritize and make sure that they are all on the same page when it comes to working on big pieces of work. It could be infrastructure, it could be features, but any project that is a biggie, that is not like a feature that somebody can create in a couple of days, it will be documented this way. Everything is documented anyway, and we use Trello, but these documents are the foundation of how we avoid delays and really understand how to deliver fast, high quality sort of products. So the first one, I just want to give you some sections so you understand the level of detail that is required. And if you're doing this already, awesome, but it took us a while to understand the level of detail that we needed. So the first thing is that we cover what is the team structure, who is who, and what communications tools we use and how we work, holidays and time off, and then, pro tips into how to succeed in this new environment. But we go very, very detailed on that. So we obviously talk about who is part of the team. But when it comes to the tools, we just don't say, oh, we use Slack for communicating and there's a bunch of channels and, you can always talk to everybody. We don't do that. We describe the tools that we use, but then we go into the detail of what each of the channels actually mean. What are the things that you say there and the things that you don't? And this is not about micromanaging. This is about clear communication. And so everybody knows where to discuss specific topics. And if you don't do that and you start having conversations in the wrong channels, and then if somebody wakes up in Indonesia and they cannot follow all the conversation in one place, and then that person wasted a bunch of hours trying to catch up with what happened before, or try to go to different tools to understand where the last status or what is the status of the things that they need to pick up. So you have to be able to respect the channels, in this case Slack, and then define exactly what you write there and what you don't write there. And then the discipline is that when you see a team member talking about something that it shouldn't be in that channel, right away you say, just let's move this to the other channel. And I know this is a common practice in Slack, but when you are distributed, this is just a thing that is so, so important for everybody to be able to pick up when somebody left out. So the channel discipline, what type of engineering channels you have, like the tools that we use. So we do, of course, stand-ups and retrospective, and also we do, what's it called? Standard retrospective, what we have here, the weekly daily stand-ups. Oh, I forgot the other meeting that we do. Oh, well, the business catch-up. So essentially, we describe what are the type of mechanisms that we have in place to work together. So one of those, of course, is like daily stand-ups. We do a Zoom call in the morning. And for distributed teams, that means that some teams are going to be joining that call at 9 p.m. Other teams are going to be joining that call at 5 a.m. So what we try to do is to understand what is a good compromise. And whenever we cannot be all together in that call because it's too early, I didn't sleep well, whatever, I have my day off, we use Loom, for example, to do video recordings, or we leave it on Slack. So we have like a bunch of plan B, C, and D when we cannot do something. So, I cannot join the call today. So the first step will be Loom. If I cannot do Loom today because I have crappy internet, and then the third one will be living in Slack. If I cannot do any of those, I want to put it on Trello. So you have to have this kind of 3 decision making for the most silly small things, so everybody knows how to go and what to do. If you leave it to common sense, which you have to have, that is nice, but everybody will have a different version of what common sense is in some cases. So having all those different backups, channels are very important. So again, we have like weekly emails, and we have weekly updates from engineering. We have a lot of emails that are for wider communication, and we explain where you should read those and when you should read those, and we don't overlap stuff. So if I'm sharing things on Slack, I don't need to say the same on an email, right? So we do weekly emails that addresses things that are not discussed in Slack and things that were not discussed in specific meetings. So avoiding that duplication is important. People say over-communicate, and that is true, but that doesn't mean that you have to constantly repeat the things that people already know. So you have to check, do people understand this? If so, perfect, I don't have to repeat it again. And that is our experience. For other teams, you require more repetition for certain things, but we try to keep each channel very focused on what is the purpose of that communication and respect those channels very much. we have, holidays and time off. So we do unlimited holiday, which is always tricky. People will have in their heads, right? So, okay, how much is too much time off? Well, like for us, if you disappear for 2 months and we didn't know, we assume that that's not acceptable. But if you tell us that you need 3 months away because X reason, you're doing a course or you really have, whatever reason, you have a baby, I don't know, it's fine because you define in advance. So our only criteria is you need to say in advance. The same, if you are not in Slack at the same time that everybody else, that's fine. But if you don't show up in Slack for 2 days, maybe we start worrying about it. So you have to keep there like some sort of sense of what is good and what is bad and what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. And you need to write it. So everybody knows. So we have like a bunch of other things and mini rules that can help you manage communication. So one that's very simple is, for example, if you are on Slack and you're writing more than 5 minutes, so 2 people are trying to debug something and you are writing more than 5 minutes, you have to jump on a call. You cannot be writing a Bible inside Slack and that's it and pretending that you're going to be productive that way. So everybody helps each other. If we see somebody or a team member sees somebody just chatting on Slack and not really solving whatever problem they're trying to solve, somebody will tell them, like, jump on a call. And it's everybody helping each other to remind yourself that you have to, in some way, use the right channels for communication. So for resolving problems fast, it's a Zoom call. For kind of recording next steps and agreements, is a Slack. For executing the work, it is on Trello, and so on. So everybody has to help each other, and later it becomes second nature. So we have a bunch of little sort of rituals and rules that we put in place, and I share this in a blog post, so I don't have to go through all of them. I'll share the blog post later. That's just super, super, super specific, but it's just helped a ton to move things faster and avoid anybody wondering, how do we do this or what should I do next? The other type of document that I wanted to share today is this idea of customer support, because you can apply it to other parts of the business or other parts of your product development process or design. When team members are doing things that they are not normally used to do, and that might apply for design and research in general. So imagine if you are working with multiple cross-functional teams, right? They need to understand the language and the things that other teams use in their disciplines. You cannot assume the engineer will know how to reply to a customer and customer support right from at the start. So you're going to have to define a lot of the language that needs to be used, or the language that we're going to be using. So in this case, what we did is essentially define what good customer support was for us, and what were the details that actually make it good. That is not like the basic principles of be kind and communicate clearly. Just more detail, like you have to use the name of the customer, for example, and that's a thing that people need to do. Or, for example, where to find things. We use intercom. So where to find things, where to use specific responses, how long people need to stay waiting, how you address them. We didn't do a tutorial of intercom, as you see here. It's not a tutorial of intercom. It's a tutorial of where do we put the things that matter based on the case that is happening. So we have a lot of, standard templates and communication that is very common practice for most teams, but we just try to explain the background of it. So if somebody comes and they're very angry, this is how you address somebody that is angry. And this is the type of phrases that you can use in case that engineer doesn't have like a massive level of empathy. It doesn't matter, because you can give them the phrases and the things that they can use in order to kind of manage that situation. So it is about saying the minimal details of how you communicate. It's more about that and less about general principles, because general principles needs to be understood from details, what gets you, as usual. And finally, because I know I'm over time, we have this document. It's just an example of how we discuss the scope of features and engineering work. And this is between several engineers in multiple time zones. So we always start documents with why. And it's never like, oh, let's create a Google Doc and then we all can collaborate on it. That's not how it works. Like, somebody has to start the first thought process, like the first version of what is going to be happening. Sometimes it's an engineer, sometimes it's the CTO, sometimes it's a product manager. It doesn't matter. Somebody has to come up with this is why we need to do this. These are the ideas that I have. This is the approach that I think we should take. And these are the things that I don't know. And that will be the first draft, and that gets shared. And then now everybody can jump and start questioning that and adding other sections and other parts. So, but that has to happen in a way that you are not waiting for somebody else and you don't know when to start. Like somebody has to start the communication as much as possible so other people can pick up and build on top. So you start always with why we're doing this, because if that's not clear, nothing else. Then you start talking about here, there's a lot of collaboration of comments as you normally do. But you have proposed approach and what is not going to work, who's going to actually do it. We have a paper trail of exactly what we're discussing before that we don't want to eliminate, but just please ignore it because we need to have this reference in the future. Pros and cons, who's going to be, again, doing what. And the communication is very frank. It has to be like, I don't agree with this because X, Y, and Z. And you have to feel good about saying that and pushing your opinion all the way. And so, of course, these documents can become very long, but as you are perfecting the way you work remotely, the communication doesn't have to be that confrontational. It just everybody start understanding how to make their points and move the conversation forward. But it's a lot of details. So the final, because I know I'm super over, the conclusion of this is that you have to be crazy about documentation. You have to be crazy about the details and helping people to understand how to react and where to go when things are happening. And be very conscious that if you don't do that, the other person is going to be confused and there are going to be delays and it is your fault because otherwise it's just not going to work. So that's it. Thank you very much.